Good afternoon, Sunday, Hempfest at the Hemposium stage. I'm really pleased to welcome these speakers, none of whom I know. I'm Facebook friends with at least one of them, but that's about it. I know your work. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and explain this thing. This is about what about the children. We're here to talk about our vulnerabilities and our strengths. What about the children has been what's been against us since the 1980s, and Sue Rushdie in Atlanta figuring out that she could run a big campaign in the Reagan administration based on what about the children? And she had a winning issue for a while. But the whole thing's turned around. And we have an opportunity to take our greatest weakness and turn it into our greatest strength. And what's going on now with taking care of the children using cannabis is so profound, so profoundly in their face of all the lies, that this is a really powerful question. So go ahead, any order you want, introduce yourselves, tell the audience what you want, and I'll help you answer questions here in a few minutes.
My name's Vicca Thompson. I encountered CPS last November when they took my 6-year-old son from my custody for 6 weeks, and I fought until I got him back, and it changed things in Washington State and federally, and I intend to change them quite a bit more.
My name is Sierra Riddle, and this is my son Landon Riddle, and he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of blood cancer when he was 2 years old, and we lived in Utah. And Landon went through traditional chemotherapy and radiation, and it only took about 3 months until it was killing him, and he was reduced to 50% of his body weight. He was placed on a lot of narcotics. He was unable to walk anymore due to neuropathy, and it was just narcotic after narcotic, in between all of these chemotherapy treatments, and it was killing Landon. He was not tolerating it very well at all, and they told us that there was nothing else they could do for us. They gave us synthetic marijuana, Marinol, which didn't help Landon at all, and they lied to us. We reached out, we got in touch with some people, and we found out about cannabis oil and what it could do for Landon, and we moved Landon to Colorado and put him on cannabis oil when he was 2 years old, and he's now 5 years old and has been very, very healthy ever since. And we were actually able to end chemotherapy and stuff early for Landon just due to his great success with cannabis oil. And, we just spend a lot of our time now trying to educate and get the word out there to people. Childhood cancer is an epidemic in our nation. 46 children a day are diagnosed with cancer. And unless, each and every one of us start standing up for these children, they're going to be overprescribed narcotics. They're going to be overprescribed chemotherapy and radiation, and a lot of them are going to lose their lives. A lot of Landon's friends have lost their lives unnecessarily, and a lot of them have suffered until the very end. And that's completely unacceptable when we have something that is a lot safer, and cannabis is safer for our children. And thank you guys so much for being here and listening to us.
I'm Meagan Holt. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter who started taking cannabis in late February. We were doing end-of-life planning when we were introduced to cannabis. My daughter has a terminal illness. It's called Zellweger syndrome. It destroys the white matter of the brain, and most kids don't live past a year, so she's already exceeded every expectation. We started cannabis when her disease started progressing and she started having seizures. She immediately wasn't breathing through them. They would last up to an hour. When we started cannabis, she went 8.5 days with no seizures. The doctors couldn't explain why. Even when she would have seizures, they would last 1 to 2 minutes. She always breathed through them. She started having kidney stones, and we once again started reaching out to our cannabis community, and we started giving her THC, and she went 3 weeks without seizures. She started using sign language again. She's come home, and she really is changing the way that a lot of the doctors think at her hospital. They're very open-minded, but now I've realized that there's more parents. I've met so many parents who aren't fortunate. They don't get educated early. and their kids aren't being treated and they're dying of these diseases, and rare diseases like Madeline's, where there's only 4 children in the world living with it. What if we would have started cannabis at birth? Would she have become blind at 6 months old? We don't know. But I do know that everybody needs to spread the word that there's all these kids with cancer and rare diseases that cannabis is helping. Thank you.
My name is Brandon Krenzler, and I'm the father of brave Michaela Comstock. She's a very brave and courageous 10-year-old now. At 7 years old, she was diagnosed with T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Her mother, Erin Purchase, and I chose to treat her with cannabis oil, achieving a full remission from her leukemia in 6 days. And we subsequently decided to tell the world about it, hopefully to empower other parents to make the same decisions that we did. Thank you. We're here to talk about Family Matters, what it means for a family who chooses to treat their child with cannabis oil or cannabis products. It's a very artist task to do, because you got to go through a lot of regulations. You got to sift through a lot of people's contentious attitudes about it. I mean, a lot of people judge us for what we decide to do, you know, and so we want to come together to try to explain that research needs to be done to prove to them, physicians, attorneys, children's services, authority figures of any sort, that cannabis is actually a safe and therapeutic option for our children, when things like OxyContin and other opioid medications are very addictive and dangerous to be giving children that are still developing. It leads to addiction later in life, almost every single time. And that's something that we as parents all want to avoid. Nobody wants to raise a child that ends up being a drug addict. I mean, we want to raise very productive, upstanding citizens who can help lead the way for change in this world. We all hope to have, you know, our children become leaders. And, you know, if we give our children basically heroin, that's gonna set the tone for their path if you don't guide them through it the correct way. We chose to give cannabis, which is not addictive, which gives healing therapeutic benefits every single time.
Yes, definitely. And, you know, I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is, you know, we're not giving our children that are happy, healthy children marijuana. We're not trying to get our children high. Our children were on handfuls of narcotics that they wouldn't give any one of us if we broke 5 bones in our body at the same time. And they're on it 24 hours a day, you know, and it comes down to that point of, what is the difference between addiction and dependency? Just because my 2-year-old isn't going to kick down your grandma's door for dope money does not mean that he's not addicted to that drug. You know, Landon, even on good days, if I would skip a dose of OxyContin or morphine, he would start withdrawing, and I would have to give it, even if he wasn't in pain. And that is no life for a child to live. He would be so high out of his mind that he would pick his skin off. He would pull what little hair he had left out. He would bang his head against the wall. I mean, it was just absolutely terrible. And it was terrifying for him as a child to not understand what's going on or why he's in these mass amounts of pain, but then also to give him, you know, these drugs that are putting him literally on another plane mentally where he can't function or control anything. You know, our children get very developmentally delayed. Almost all of our children are developmentally delayed. They're very intelligent children. They're not dumb or anything like that, but they just have not, you know, been able to develop along the right paths that, you know, happy, healthy children can. And with cannabis, a lot of our kids are able to return to school. They're able to return to a healthy life because their immune system is kept higher and they're kept off of narcotics, which means less bad days. You know, when you have a 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, up as old as Brandon and Aaron's daughter, 7 and 8, and they go into steroid rages or narcotic rages, you know, what are you supposed to do? They can't go to school. Nobody wants a child that's out of hand out of school, right? And it's not our children's fault that they are given all of these narcotics but then expected to act like an adult while taking a lot of drugs. That's just not, you know, that's not reality for these children at all. And, you know, Landon nowadays, I mean, we've been here for 3 days, and he's only had cannabis in the morning and at night, not all throughout the day, and he's been absolutely fine. Running all around, he doesn't get sick, he has absolutely no withdrawals or any kind of symptoms like that if he goes without cannabis. Can anybody say that for handfuls and handfuls of pharmaceuticals that they take? No, you can't. You have to take them every day or you will start to become sick. You know, and just because we have legalized in different states, Landon and I came from Colorado where it's been legal for a good amount of time now. My son can't go to public school because he's under the influence of a federally illegal drug, and all schools are federal property. So there's a lot of work that we all still have to do, because guess what? My child lived. He wasn't supposed to, but he did. And now things are going to have to change for all of our children to be able to move forward as happy, healthy children, which is what we deserve, and our children deserve that as well.
I definitely agree with that. There is a lot of room to grow. My daughter, when we started cannabis, I said she was towards the end of her life, and we were living at Seattle Children's and have been, even for treating more disease progression, even with cannabis. She came home actually 2 days before Hempfest, thankfully. We started THC, but she had been in and out of Children's for the last 6 months. And Seattle Children's is a federally funded hospital. They're very supportive of cannabis, but because they're federally funded, cannabis is not on her medication list. The nurses cannot give it. I can't talk about it with people unless they bring it up to me. Anyone that talks about it has to be an independent contractor of the hospital. So this means that every single day, I would have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and stay at Children's from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. just to give her medicine 3 times a day. So for 6 months, my husband and my 1-year-old would sit at home and wait for me to come home. And that almost tore everything apart. And cannabis really has started changing some of these doctors. When we first started using cannabis, they didn't have to say that they weren't okay with what I was doing, but I'm not the type of person to have someone tell me that the proof is in her. We started using cannabis and she was fine. When I started using THC, the doctors had a social worker come into my house to make sure that everything was okay before she came home. And it's terrible to think that just because I'm using cannabis, I was looked at possibly being a bad mother. They have no idea that I'm OCD and my house is ridiculously clean. I have labels on everything for my daughter. I have lab results printed with every bottle in case someone tried to come into my house, because I dare you to take my child's medicine. And this is why there's so much more room. I'm very new to the community, but every parent that I meet is so passionate about more change, because I feel like the kids are going unrecognized because people are focusing on cannabis as recreational and as this joyous, wonderful thing that brings people together, but it's saving children's lives and changing the way that people think. I mean, my biochemical geneticist asked me for any information I had on CBD because my daughter's condition has so little research that the work that I have been doing with her in using cannabis has prolonged her life, and there's no explanation. Her disease is progressive. It destroys the white matter of her brain. It won't stop, but cannabis has stopped it. We've had 3 MRIs since she started cannabis, and she has no disease progression.
Everybody go? This has got to have provoked some great questions. Who's got some out there? So
I think,
yeah,
behind
that's
you.
where I was going, Kat.
I think she had a question right behind you standing up.
Yeah, you go first, Kat.
How long do you think it will take for the laws to change in terms of at Swedish or in any of the local hospitals? I understand that you are working with them actively as well, but how long do you estimate or anticipate for the doctors to start prescribing and using it more regularly?
Yeah, honestly, it's already happening in a lot of states. In Colorado, Children's Hospital of Colorado just accepted quite a large amount of money to start a study on children that have epilepsy and use marijuana. But honestly, it's not going to change until every single one of us that have a sick child stand up and say something and say, hey, what do you know about cannabis? Well, you should learn, or I'm going to go somewhere else, because that's what my child needs. And until enough of us do that, honestly, they won't, because every single doctor that is a federal approved physician, again, cannot touch it because it is a Schedule 1 drug. It is more dangerous than meth, according to the government. And we all know that that is very incorrect, but, you know, no doctor is going to put his license on the line for something that is, he already knows is federally illegal, you know, and thankfully we've had a few doctors like Dr. Robert Malamine, Dr. Donald Abrams, Dr. William Courtney that have been willing, you know, to do these things. But honestly, like I said, until enough of us stand up, until enough of us come together and demand it, it's not going to happen, because just the ones you see up here and the handful of other canna moms and dads that we are in our little force, we're not enough. We're enough to get it to where we are today, but sadly we are not enough to make these doctors change their minds. Every single person needs to demand, not even request, they need to demand that their doctors come to seminars and conferences and learn about the endocannabinoid system, because that is the only way, ma'am.
Yeah.
Congressman Jared Polis and Earl Blumenauer both are working together to deschedule CBD and reschedule THC, and their petition is going to be going forward, I believe, during their next session.
That'll be, yes, that right there will be amazing, but until, you know, it's rescheduled, I think we all know that nothing can be done. You know, a lot of us, we can't even tell our children's doctors exactly what we're doing or how we're doing it. We have to take our own journals, our own logs, if we ever want this to be documented, because they literally, they can't do anything with it, you know, and it's, you know, we still have a long way, but it's definitely getting to that point. I've been reported to CPS over half a dozen times for choosing cannabis over narcotics, for choosing cannabis over chemo, or whatever it is, because Landon does not need narcotics if he has high THC oil. Why would I give my son fentanyl or Oxycontin or anything like that when I have anything from icy hot to capsules to candy with cannabis in them? You know, he doesn't need it. But every time I deny it, they say that I'm denying him medical treatment. And that's absolutely not true. You know, how many times have a lot of us that are cannabis only, is what I like to say. We don't use narcotics. We don't use even ibuprofen, really. How many times have you gone to the hospital for whatever it is, and they are shoving those narcotics at you? They want you to take those narcotics home. And if you say no, they look at you like you're crazy, you know? But then they turn around and wonder why we have pill mills everywhere, why we have such a high overdose rate in the United States, because they are shoving it down our throats. And it's gotten to the point that now they're shoving it down our children's throats. So until we all stand up and say no, it's really not going to change or progress. We all have to realize that this is going to be a joint effort on all of our parts, whether or not you have a sick child. Because you know what? 4 years ago, I didn't have a sick child. My child was happy and healthy, and I had never heard the word cancer related to my son's name. But the day that he got cancer, that changed, and it shouldn't take that happening, me almost losing my child, for me to get involved in a cause. You know, so please understand that our children's lives are important. These could be the next leaders, the next presidents, you know, and if we can save their lives with the plant, imagine what we can do for everyone else. Imagine what we can do for our parents, our grandparents. You know, I watched my grandmother die slowly and painfully of colon cancer that spread to her brain. And then 6 months later, my son was diagnosed. I had no idea that I could have at least eased her suffering, that I could have at least made an impact on her quality of life. And you know, for a lot of us, quality is more important than quantity with our children. We don't want to have a child that's doped up in a vegetable going through medical treatments and not be there consciously with us. Cannabis allows that. That, you know, you can still go through the same procedures, the same things in treatment, but your child is actively there. They're consciously aware of what's going on, and they're better able to handle it. I mean, a lot better.
Question here.
So assuming a parent makes the conscious decision that they want to treat their child with cannabis oil, I'm guessing that all of you have had radical, differently experiences on how you plugged into finding that oil, gaining access and or gaining authorization. There may be someone here who's interested in your experience with that.
Yeah, I definitely got very lucky early on. I'm very resource savvy, and I actually was already in a support group for parents of kids with my daughter's condition. And there was a family in Seattle that I reached out to that is not in the community because they're afraid. And they gave me the resource Michelle Sexton. She's amazing. She gave me a list of naturopaths, and I called about 3 of them. And this woman I talked to, Dr. Katrina Liamshauser, she's amazing. She said she would work with us free of charge. I immediately started, I would say, posting on Facebook about it, and I realized that all these people, I had 3 people report some of our first posts that I said we started using CBD oil, it's amazing, message me if you want to know more about it. And Michelle, we had become friends on Facebook, and she was like, you know, you're a very inspiring person, and I actually spent some time with a National Geographic photographer, and she helped open the door to this community of people who were willing to not only give me CBD for my daughter, but they educated me, and that was deep green extracts, and they really have given me more information than I would have ever thought I could have gotten in years. I mean, it's kind of crazy that I'll meet other people like this family that, like I said, they're living in fear because they have a very young, sick baby who has terminal illness, and the last thing they want is their child taken away. And for me, that's ridiculous. I mean, you know, we just want our kids to have a good life. And for my daughter, I know especially, I can't prolong her life, but I can make her comfortable. And that's one thing that I've always told the doctors, is that I don't want my daughter taking methadone. This is something they introduced right when I started giving her THC in combination with CBD. And they were very against me using THC. They said, this will never work. She won't be able to be weaned on her medication. She's been weaned off of all of her narcotics in 3 weeks because of THC and stopped having seizures.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have pictures that I carry in my phone all the time to show people of my daughter on Easter intubated, which is where they put a tube down your throat to breathe, because she had her tonsils removed, and they gave her very heavy narcotics in the operating room, and she stopped breathing. She had to have an opiate reversal the next day. And when she was intubated, I put Kush cream on her throat, and she was extubated that night. Within 6 hours of putting Kush cream on her throat, she got the breathing tube out. That doesn't happen. And I think that more parents, I hate to see parents, I have parents that I've met, a lot of parents actually that I know that aren't in the community that want to be, but they're so scared, and they have supply issues. And I've had friends calling me in the middle of the night whose kids are on cannabis, freaking out because their child is having an episode because they got contaminated CBD oil, and they're screaming and holding their breath and not breathing, and so they're having to drive to my house, which is a 2-hour drive, to get pure oil to help their child. That shouldn't happen. No parent should be afraid to give their child medicine. Every parent whose child is sick and has terminal illness or develops cancer should be offered cannabis first. It's natural. It has no side effects.
Another question? There you go. You're next.
My question is about CPS. I know that every family up there, except for Meagan, has dealt with CPS. Our family, the first time we took our children to Hempfest in 2011, were reported to CPS just for bringing our children here. And that's unacceptable. I was hoping to hear from Vicca a little bit about CPS and her case and what we can do to stop this horrible bigotry and judgmental views that are getting our families harmed by this governmental agency coming in and ripping us apart over the plant. And what do you think we can do? What should we do on this event?
The first thing we have to do is reach out to our elected representatives, because it's the Schedule 1 is the issue and the UN treaty. These two things, just, we have to clear this up this year. Like, we can't move any further without that. If you call your congressperson or your senator and your governor, if you call these people, they'll listen to you. And if thousands and thousands and thousands of us call them, it makes a bigger impact. We've changed, all the changes that we've made have been through us reaching out to our government and demanding that we be heard. And the thing with CPS, there's a really new thing that I'm really excited about, a federal class action lawsuit to be filed in November from all the states to just end this. We need just so many things we need. We need for them to not be able to use hearsay. We need for our children to be considered humans and not property. Those two things alone would change everything. If we had lapel cameras on the intake agents, that would solve another 90% of the foster care. Because of the federal adoption out incentives, the foster care has to be robust and full. So they don't care if they're right or wrong. If they can take your kid based on what the law says, they're taking your kid. They don't care. So you have to make them care, and the only way to do that is scream when they're doing it to you. And eventually you get through it, and then you start, running for office and talking about it and saying to other people, I need you to help me. We need to reach out together to all of our representatives and all of our senators and everybody that you can think of. Every city council person, every person in the government is making this happen. So they can all make it not happen. We just have to lift the ban. It's really, really easy. So if everybody could just reach out, that'd be really great.
I want to add a little to that. Make sure to know your rights.
Yes.
That's the most important thing of all. You have to know your rights.
And then let me add to that, if CPS comes to your door, do not let them in. Do not cooperate.
Thank you.
Oh, I have some trouble with that. I have my lawyer.
Well, they don't have a right to come in. You can invite them in, but if you're doing what you know is right.
Yes, show them through the window. They've seen that they're safe, but you do not have to let them in without a warrant.
They're trying to take your kid. Yeah.
Very good. Here's another one.
Hi, I was wondering if I could make a suggestion on, everything I'm listening to, it all makes sense on why the topic is being said at the point, but at the same time, when you're trying to get your point across in a positive way, all you're doing is bringing negative attention with anything. I know it's sad, your stories are very encouraging, but all the negative, the CPS, everything you're talking about is bringing nay to the topic. Instead of focusing on the ones that are not on board, who cares about them? We are already winning. Focusing on the ones that are on board, that are all for it, publicizing them, helping them with funding, instead of wasting funding on trying to convince others to be on board. Popularize everyone who's on board, forget about the naysayers. And then as far as anything negative, when you bring in addiction, you bring in other drugs, that's got nothing to do with this conversation. And people that do drugs are going to be offended that you're putting down their drug and supporting yours on blast on 5th Street.
These are real issues that we face every single day of our lives. We risk intervention from Children's Services every single day that we give our child any dosing of cannabis oil. We risk our children falling down the path of addiction every single time we give them an opiate-based medication. Thank you.
That is really
And I would like to say, I'm 27 years old, I've broken about 27 bones, and I had a hysterectomy shortly after I had Landon, and I'm only 27 years old. And pharmaceuticals made me a junkie. I was a heroin addict. I did black tar heroin for 3 years before my son got ill. And I will tell you, ma'am, that these are real life issues. Addiction is a real life issue, and if I can keep my son from going through that, I will. And it's not tacking down on anybody, because I used to be a junkie. In fact, what is today? Oh my gosh, guys, today is my 3 years sober. It has been 3 3 years since I have taken a pharmaceutical or an illegal drug. And I've actually broken 9 bones in that amount of time and had 2 surgeries and a hysterectomy. I did my hysterectomy as well without any narcotics. You know, and for people to say that this is bringing a negative view to it, wait till your child gets cancer, honey. Then we'll see how negative you feel about it. And we'll see how negative you feel about sitting there doping them up every day and injecting your child with Oxycontin when there's something as simple as cannabis. You know, and honestly, a lot of people ask us that. Well, why do you keep doing this? You know, like, screw the naysayers. Who cares what they say? Like, one love. Are you gonna be there to help me out when if my child breaks a bone or you know, God forbid, has a relapse? Are you a doctor? Yeah. Are you going to be there when CPS shows up to have your obviously educated comments coming out of your mouth? No, you're not. And guess what? I have testified in front of Congress. I have testified in front of Senate, and my voice was heard. I wasn't kicked out like she was, because I'm very respectful and I know how to say what I need to say to get my point across. And there can be 300,000 of us out here. Guess what? How many people are sitting on Congress that get to make our voting anything? There's literally like a few for each state, so it does not matter how many we are. We have to convince them. Okay, look it up for every county, every city, whatever, how many elected officials you have. It's not even close to 1% of representing us. But yet, let's just forget about them, right? Because we're 3 million strong in the cannabis movement. Guess what? I need doctors. I need board certified doctors. I need senators and congressmen and people like that so that my child can go to school, so that my child can grow up and actually have a chance at living a life. You know, and that's why we tell people about our stories and what we've gone through. Not to bring a negative view to this, not to do anything, but more than less to let you guys know, to all of the veterans that have been out here for years and years. You know, this is the 24th year. I'm sure a lot of you have been here for a lot of them. We will carry the torch on, and we won't carry it like her. We'll carry it respectfully. We will get into meetings with senators and congressmen and doctors and leukemia research scientists, for goodness sakes, because that's what we do on an everyday basis. We are here to carry the torch for you guys, we promise, and we will not let anybody down. Because I think all of us have a family, and the family does matter, and that's what this is all about, is you cannot be a cannabis anything, user, activist, advocate, nothing without putting yourself and your children at harm. And I think we all know that. We've all seen it firsthand. So again, thank you guys for being here. I'm very sorry for that ignorant comment. That was terrible. Thank you guys so much for being amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have to make change to end the negativity that's associated with our industry. Change.
That's right. Drop the mic. That was Sierra.
Is that it? Are we done?
We actually got time for one more question if you got time.
Let's do it.
Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Actually, you asked me. You wanted to ask.
It's a pretty dress.
Thank you. I really appreciate all of you guys up there. I'm not a grandmother yet, but I'm ready to be. I'm going to do the whole parental thing. And my door is locked because I do grow legally. And so the only people that come through my door come through because I welcome them. I do think, I just want to have a heart for this lady. When people misspeak like that, I can only imagine the history there. So I want to lift the whole boat and just say that I think it's incumbent upon us to also welcome people when they have a challenging question. I just want to say that, and it shouldn't have been directed at you guys. But okay, so here's my question: is I think there are direct analogies between what you folks are dealing with and the general mental health situation in America. And I just want to put out a plea for all of us to reach out, do the act of reaching out to our friends, our family, our extended family who are hooked on the incredibly toxic drugs that are just passed off at the end of one sentence, you know, when in the mental health profession. And to remind people, even if they're complete neophytes, that they have a gentle and dependable way to get off the heavy-duty toxins, and particularly the antidepressants, and a gentle way to heal. And this is incumbent upon all of us because we have a nation that refuses to ask, why are we all in so much pain? Right?
Yes.
So I want to get in the real conversation. Why are we in pain? And how are we, you know, interacting with our plant world and each other in a way that's dignified and dictated by Mother Nature?
Stimulate your endocannabinoid system daily.
Yes.
There you go. I love that. And that should be taught in kindergarten. How about it?
Health class. Cannabis for a treatment for everything. I lost 3 children before I had Madeline. I carried them very late in pregnancy. In fact, 1 child lived for a day. And I was put on antipsychotics, and they made me go crazy. My husband, I'm very sheltered. My dad's retired Navy, so I didn't know anything about cannabis. And my husband was like, here, you need to do this, smoke a bowl. And I smoked my first bowl, and I talked about my son, and I came to terms with letting him go. Parents can't do that. I have post-traumatic stress disorder for a reason that most women do not talk about pregnancy loss. I can guarantee that there's probably 2 women in here that have had a miscarriage, a stillbirth, late pregnancy loss, something, and we're given antipsychotics and told to get over it. That's not right. That's not fair. I don't want to be addicted to drugs.
I would actually call that emotional abuse. That's
yes.
Grieving is a natural part of life. We have to respect the grieving
and
process.
Using cannabis, it's the only thing that helps me deal with on a daily basis, knowing that despite using cannabis, my daughter has bad days. We have days where we have to go to the hospital and have imaging for kidney stones, and then we have to use Tylenol. We have to use small amounts of Dilaudid to help her go through it. And it shouldn't be that way. I should be allowed to use cannabis, and there should be enough information for me to always use cannabis when I'm dosing her. I shouldn't need to use other medications. And until every parent is educated, people are going to be clueless to the fact that they could be giving their child something that can help them, that can help treat their disease in the long term instead of destroying their body, deteriorating quicker. Why is it that on hospice you're given a care kit? They come to your home, they give you morphine, they give you methadone, they give you oxycodone, they literally give you a box of drugs for your child. And I am one of the first parents in our hospice service to ever refuse to use the care kit. Instead, I choose cannabis. And we're very fortunate that we're supported, and it's mostly because I take a very firm stance that I'm going to use cannabis, and if you don't like it, go ahead and tell on me.
Absolutely. Let's hear it for this panel. Everybody, thank you so much. Meagan, Holt, Brandon, Krenzler, Vicca, Thompson, and Sierra Riddle.
Thank you.
Everybody's the state of the state here. We've got several leaders, people who are at the forefront of what's going on here in this chaos that is Washington. So,